The wind coming off Boston Harbor carried the sharp bite of early spring and the smell of tar from the shipyards. For 16-year-old Nathaniel Carter, the scent had always meant the same thing: home, work, and the promise of a future he had not yet dared to dream. But on this chilly morning of April 1775, the harbor smelled different. It carried something electric, something heavier than salt and sea. It carried unrest. Nathaniel's boots thudded on the wooden pier as he jogged toward the warehouse where his father was already stacking crates. British soldiers patrolled farther down the dock, scarlet coats bright even in the morning fog. Nathaniel kept his eyes down. Even though the soldiers had not said anything, their presence alone twisted a knot in his stomach. They looked at every colonist as if he were a criminal, or worse, an enemy. "You're late again," his father grunted without looking up. Thomas Carter's voice was like gravel dragged across a wooden board. Years of hauling barrels and crates had shaped his shoulders into a permanent arch of effort. "I came as fast as I could." Nathaniel grabbed a coiled rope and began lifting a crate beside him. The soldier stopped people on the main road. Thomas muttered a curse. Redcoats meddling again. It wasn't just meddling. Everyone in Boston knew it. After the Tea Act, after the protests, after the Boston Massacre, after the coercive acts, every week the tension grew. Colonists whispered in taverns. British officers watched from windows. Something felt close, like a thunderclap just waiting for the sky to split. Nathaniel tried to push away the uneasy feeling. He didn't want trouble. He wanted to work, earn money, maybe buy a small boat of his own someday. The world was already dangerous enough without adding rebellion to the mix. But then the warehouse door swung open. A young woman with dark hair and fierce brown eyes stepped inside, wind clinging to her cloak. Eleanor Ellie Mercer, the daughter of a local printer, had a knack for appearing exactly where trouble brewed. She always seemed like she was in motion, even when standing still. "Nathaniel," she called, breathless. "Have you heard? Riders from Lexington brought word. British regulars are marching, tonight or tomorrow. They mean to seize supplies from Concord." Thomas froze mid-lift. "How sure is this?" "As sure as the ink on my father's hands," Ellie replied. "The Sons of Liberty are gathering. If the regulars move, the militia will meet them." Nathaniel's mouth went dry. "Are you saying there might be a battle?" Ellie held his gaze. "War doesn't wait for people to be ready, Nathaniel." A shout echoed down the pier. A British officer barked orders, soldiers shifting their muskets. Ellie stepped close enough that only the two Carters could hear her. "You should come tonight. There's a meeting at Old North Church. They're preparing signals." "Signals for what?" Nathaniel whispered. "For freedom," Ellie said simply. She turned and vanished as quickly as she had appeared, her cloak whipping behind her like a dark flame. That night, Nathaniel lay awake in the small room above his family's home, staring at the ceiling beams. He could still hear Ellie's words, "for freedom." They sounded brave, but they also sounded like a death sentence. He didn't want to sneak out. He certainly didn't want to be caught anywhere near a rebellious meeting. But he couldn't sleep, not while the world outside seemed to be shifting in ways he couldn't understand. And not while Ellie Mercer's fierce eyes stayed burned into his mind. Nathaniel slipped from bed, careful not to wake his father, and stepped into the night. Boston was different after dark. Shadows stretched long between houses. Lanterns flickered against cobblestone. The stillness felt deceptive, like the city itself was holding its breath. He approached Old North Church cautiously. A single lantern hung near the side entrance. Two men stood nearby, one older, one younger, speaking in low voices. Nathaniel recognized the older one immediately, Paul Revere. Revere had long been whispered about, silversmith, rider, messenger for the Sons of Liberty. If he was here, then something important was brewing. Before Nathaniel could decide whether to leave, A hand grabbed his sleeve. "Nathaniel Carter," Ellie whispered sharply. "You came." He swallowed hard. "I shouldn't be here." "That's what everyone says before history begins," she countered. Inside, a small group of men crowded around a table. Nathaniel recognized some: merchants, printers, militia captains. They argued quietly among themselves. Revere raised a hand. "If the regulars march tonight, we must be ready." The younger man beside him, William Dawes, nodded grimly. Ellie leaned close to Nathaniel. "They're planning the signals. If the British move by land, 1 lantern. By sea, 2. Nathaniel blinked. "2 lanterns? That's all it takes?" Ellie smiled, though there was no humor in it. Sometimes revolutions start with just a spark. Footsteps sounded behind them. A heavy-set British sergeant rounded the corner outside the church. Nathaniel's breath caught. Had they been discovered? Was this treason? Revere blew out the lantern in a swift motion. "Everyone out the back, now." Nathaniel's legs moved before his mind caught up. Ellie grabbed his arm, pulling him toward the narrow passage behind the church. The group scattered like shadows in the wind. They didn't stop running until they reached a quiet alley. Nathaniel leaned against a brick wall, chest heaving. "I shouldn't have come. If the British catch me, catch any of us." "Then they'll learn we don't scare easily," Ellie said, her voice fierce. "I'm not a fighter. I'm not a soldier." "Neither are most who change the world." She stepped closer. "When history chooses you, running won't save you. It will only leave you behind." Before Nathaniel could respond, distant bells tolled through the night. Ellie froze. "Do you hear that?" Shouts rose in the streets, doors slammed, dogs barked, lantern lights flickered to light in houses. Then horse hooves. Fast, urgent. Paul Revere thundered past, shouting the words that would echo across history. "The British are coming!" The alarm spread like wildfire. Windows flew open, militiamen scrambled from their homes. Church bells clanged through Boston. Ellie gripped Nathaniel's arm. "This is it. The march has begun. The first shots, maybe the start of a war." Nathaniel stared toward the harbor, where faint lights glimmered on the water. His heartbeat thundered as loudly as Revere's horse. "What do we do now?" he whispered. Ellie squared her shoulders. "What everyone does when the world changes." She took his hand. "We step forward."